There's someone in your head right now. Maybe you know exactly who it is. Maybe you haven't spoken to them in months. Maybe you never even dated. Maybe you did, and it ended, and logically you know it's over. And yet there they are. Every morning, every quiet moment, every song that comes on at the wrong time. You have tried to stop. You've told yourself to move on. You've deleted the messages, avoided the places, kept yourself busy. And somehow, in the middle of doing something completely unrelated, they appear again, uninvited, completely at home in your head. Why? Why that person? Why won't your brain let them go? The answer is not romantic. It's not mystical. It's not fate. It is deeply, uncomfortably scientific. And once you understand what your brain is actually doing, you will never think about this the same way again. Let's start with how the brain handles reward. Because what you're experiencing isn't just emotion. It's chemistry. When you first connect with someone, when there's excitement, attraction, uncertainty, possibility, your brain releases dopamine. The same chemical involved in every addictive behavior known to science. Gambling, substances, compulsive scrolling. Dopamine is not the chemical of pleasure. It is the chemical of wanting, of anticipation, of the moment just before you get the thing. And the most powerful trigger for dopamine is not a guaranteed reward. It is an uncertain one. In the 1950s, a psychologist named B.F. Skinner ran a now famous experiment with rats and reward levers. When a lever produced a reward every single time it was pressed, the rats used it calmly and regularly. Predictable, manageable. But when the lever only sometimes produced a reward, randomly, unpredictably, the rats became obsessed. They pressed it compulsively, frantically. They could not stop. Psychologists call this a variable reward schedule, and it is the most addictive reward structure known to exist. It is exactly how slot machines are designed, and it is exactly what happens in the early stages of almost every relationship that burns itself into your memory. The person who texted back immediately, you don't think about them the way you think about this person. The person who is warm and consistent and always available, you appreciated them, maybe, but they didn't get under your skin like this. This person, the one you can't stop thinking about, almost certainly gave you something and then didn't. Was close and then distant. Made you feel seen and then uncertain. Hot and then cold. In your brain, responding exactly the way a rat responds to a variable lever, became hooked on the pattern. But dopamine is only part of the story. There is something else happening, something that goes deeper than chemistry and into the structure of how human memory actually works. The brain does not store completed experiences the way it stores incomplete ones. There is a well-documented psychological effect called the Zeigarnik Effect, named after Soviet psychologist Zeigarnik, which describes the brain's tendency to hold on to unfinished things far more persistently than finished ones. Waitresses remember orders that haven't been delivered. Students remember problems they haven't solved. And people remember relationships that never reached a conclusion, the ending that never came, the conversation that never happened, the question that was never answered. Your brain is not being dramatic. It is doing exactly what it is designed to do, holding open loops open, waiting for closure that may never arrive. That person lived in your head partly because the story between you doesn't have an ending your brain can file away. It is still open, still waiting, still running in the background like an app that never fully closed. There's one more layer, and this one is perhaps the most uncomfortable of all. Often, not always, but often, the person you can't stop thinking about is not someone you're simply attached to. They are someone who activated something in you, something old, something that was already there before they arrived. Psychologists who study attachment theory have found that the relationships that grip us hardest are frequently the ones that echo the emotional patterns of our earliest experiences. If you grew up with love that was inconsistent, warm one moment and withdrawn the next, then inconsistent love as an adult doesn't just feel painful. It feels familiar. It feels like home. Your nervous system recognizes the pattern, not because it is good for you, but because it is known, and the brain, above almost everything else, is drawn to the known. So how do you stop? How do you actually close the loop, quieten the chemistry, and stop giving this person real estate in your head that they didn't earn and don't deserve? The honest answer is, you probably can't force it. Trying to suppress a thought directly almost always makes it stronger. Telling yourself not to think about someone is one of the most reliable ways to think about them constantly. What actually works, what the research points to consistently, is replacement, not suppression. New experiences that generate their own dopamine. New connections that begin to compete for mental space. New stories that start to overlap with the old one. And perhaps most importantly, closure that you create for yourself rather than waiting to receive from them. The conversation you write but don't send. The acknowledgement to yourself of what this person represented. Not necessarily who they actually were, but what they stood for in your emotional landscape. The person in your head is not there because of who they are. They are there because of what your brain made them mean. And the moment you understand that, the moment you see the chemistry, the incomplete loop, the old pattern being replayed, they become a little smaller, a little less permanent, a little less like fate. They were never really in your head. You were.